Welcome to the John Harrison Podcast. Statistics show us that about 70% of people are disengaged in the workplace. Obviously, that affects bottom lines of companies, individual, their own engagement at work, but also affects families and communities. We don't want to just be frustrated about things that are going on in the workplace or in the world. We want to do something about it. So we're going to talk about this while others aren't, and we hope you will join us on this journey.
Welcome back to the John Harrison Podcast. This is Madeline Baker, and we've got a full table here today because we have a special guest, Caleb Osborne, with us. So the whole JH team here, and then Caleb's with us. He has been a great ambassador of the VIP way and just understands our concepts so well. And so we feel super blessed that you're here, Caleb.
Excited to be here and be part of this conversation. The John Harrison and the VIP two-way and all this has meant a lot to me in my development as a leader. So I hope that I can be part of helping some others do that as well. My background is I am currently in a government affairs and consulting firm, a small firm based in Little Rock, Arkansas, doing work helping people that have to engage with state government, have a variety of clients and things or groups that we work with. But I came into this role after about 9 years in state government, working in roles with, first as an environmental regulator with the Division of Environmental Quality, and also did almost 4 years with Parks, Heritage, and Tourism, which is a state agency that talks about what a wonderful place Arkansas is. And in both of those, I had a variety of leadership roles, including my final role with Division of Environmental Quality. I was the director, so I oversaw the entire agency, had the opportunity to work with a variety and range of teams, and so that's been very formative for me in understanding different styles of leaders, different challenges that leaders have, and has given me some good opportunity, challenged me in my own personal growth, and that's why groups like this, podcasts like this are tremendous resources, I believe, because leaders need to grow. And I know today we're going to be talking about great leaders. And I think part of that growth is part of that process.
That's so true, Caleb. And I know myself and the team, we're excited to hear what you have to say about this topic. The topic today, y'all have probably already heard the title or read the title. It is What Makes a Great Leader. And that is very general sounding. But here at John Harrison, we talk about this all day long, and I think that we have a little different perspective, a little different take than a lot of consultants. So I'm just going to throw out the general question. What makes a great leader? Who wants to start us off?
Yeah, I'll go first. This is Melissa. So I tend to think back to some of the early leaders in my career that had an influence on me, and I use that word great a lot to describe them, actually. But some of the things that just kind of stood out to me about them was just their level of integrity, their willingness to always be honest and forthright and transparent, even in the most difficult of conversations. But they were balanced in how they did that. They were balanced in the softness of how they delivered that news, or open to and getting your ideas and thoughts and feedback. So it may not be the news that you wanted to hear, or it may not be where you thought you were going, or the company was going, or the project was going, but they were always open in that balance of communication and giving that information to you and willing to listen, I think. So I think that requires a lot of integrity to be able to do that. That along with humility probably are the two things, because they realize they just can't do it all on their own.
That's good. I think for me, when I think back to the great leaders, it's people that cared about me, but not only about me and how I did, but they even cared about the family. They would ask, how's the family doing? Or that, and be considerate about just me having a lot of kids, and maybe I need time off or something, so they understood, So it's just an understanding leader of, okay, this guy has a lot of kids, he has a lot of responsibilities. So, and obviously I'm getting my work done, right? And so it's not like he's holding me to a less standard, but he or she would would just take all of that in consideration and ask about the kids. How's the kids? This, is the wife doing okay? Does she have too much going on now? And just kind of ask more than just, about work all the time, I guess. Yeah,
Just
personable.
one quick thing to that. I think when you hear the word recognition in the workplace, we sometimes think of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeti cup or a Starbucks gift card or whatever. We need to recognize that person. But to me, it's always about recognizing you're a human and you have a life outside of work, and they don't have to be intimately involved with your life outside of work.
Right.
But at the point that you've got other things going on, and just recognize that without lowering the standard of the expectations.
Well, and this is Caleb Osborne. I shouldn't have let y'all go first because y'all took shouldn't have let others talk before I did. When I think about a great leader, the things that come to mind for me, really, I guess the immediate word that came to mind was impact. And I think that for a lot of organizations and businesses, that impact means, the bottom line or revenue or some other figure like that. And that matters because if you're not hitting your marks, and, in state government, where you hear a lot of my examples come out of, you kind of have a monopoly on some activity that you're doing on behalf of the people of the state of Arkansas. So you kind of got to do it. And not doing it becomes a big thing, or not doing it well becomes a big thing. So that is important. But I think when it comes down to engagement with the team and how people interact, I think of impact in terms of, helping, whether it's helping employees grow, having some engagement, and really giving them a vision of where they're trying to go, giving them a vision of where they can go, and hopefully there's something dynamic about it in terms of the team is going somewhere. I think the teams that really struggle, and the ones that I think probably have asked about their leaders, they feel like their leaders are not great, to bad, or a bad boss, if people talk about that. A lot of the times I think it comes down to there's either a listlessness or a wildly careening from one thing to another, and no sort of driving goal and where they're trying to go. And with that, maybe a super nice guy, but if they're not taking their team anywhere or going any direction, that's not helpful whatsoever. And so that's one that comes to mind as well. And another piece that came to mind with that was the sort of idea of trust and confidence. I think the team needs to have trust and confidence in their leader, and the leader needs to have a team that they can trust. I think of the bosses I've had, the leaders I've worked for who are great. I've had tons of trust in where they said we were going or what we needed to do, because they had earned that, they had deserved that, and those are some things that come to mind.
What I love about that, Caleb, is we think of, excuse me, it's very easy to think of the toxic leaders. Oh, they scream and yell and public embarrassment and inappropriate or all that stuff, of course. But I love that Caleb said there could be some very kind people who there's no direction, or to Jason's point, they may not, they may be kind, but they don't think of you as human beings. No direction, not being humble, all these things. So it's not always toxic stuff, because I've worked for a lot of nice people over my years, but I thought, we just didn't really get much done. And I didn't feel like I knew where we were heading. And again, I think in our society, we might think the boldest people are the best leaders because they speak loud and they have they might have a very clear vision, but can they relate to other people? Can they get other people excited about the vision? And just one piece of this, and I say this in our sessions sometimes, it's interesting in sports. I know not everybody's a sports fan, but there are a lot of leaders in sports who were not the best players, the best athletes. Matter of fact, it's almost rare if there's someone that was an incredible player who became an incredible coach. And I'm not saying sports is always analogous to the workplace, but it is interesting because you go, that person was such a great quarterback, they should run a football team, because it's a different job. And most people that get promoted, and we see this in our sessions, have been promoted because they get things done. It's a very big change to go from you getting things done to making sure other people are getting things done and having them want to do it and the why behind it. So basically, I think leadership is an incredibly difficult job. And in many cases, we throw out money and a nice office or money in the company vehicle. And Caleb and I were talking before we went live here, just to talk about there's people, most people want to make more money. And with that comes more responsibility. And they go, well, will you take on 10 people? They go, yeah, sure. Yeah, that sounds good. Which is why we do leadership training, because we want to be honest with people about what it takes to lead human beings. And if you don't want to do that's the other thing. I think we have a stigma a little bit. If you don't want to lead people, you are not motivated. Instead of going, that's not my thing, and I'm happy to be an individual contributor, and we should value that and love that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of came to mind, just tagging onto what you said and also what Jason said about caring for people as a person or an individual, I feel like leaders also work to stretch and grow their people. They have a desire to see them succeed in that way. And it's not just about getting the task done for today, but how is my person going to grow as they navigate through this task? Or what are the challenges or the deficiencies that might come true or come to visibility? So as a leader, you recognize that and you give them an opportunity to grow or improve in that as you go forward. And I think there's a genuineness of heart that comes with leadership in that, because it's something that doesn't necessarily come natural, because most leaders want to get things done, right? They're really push forward kind of progressive people. So to be able to balance and look at where growth opportunities need to happen on your team, but also, how is this going to benefit this person long term? It's not just what you can get out of them today, so to speak.
I think that reminds me of some examples I saw, unfortunately, too often in state government where a manager or supervisor would come to you and they had an employee who was considering, applying for a promotional opportunity, or expressed an interest in moving somewhere else, or going to another agency that would give them a chance to move up and perceive their move in their career. And just the bemoaning and frustration that came from this manager or supervisor that was happening. And while the immediate pain of losing someone, especially in an environment where it's not, at times there were restrictions or things that would dictate a longer process for filling the position, that was a counseling opportunity for me, as when I was the leader over this team or a peer trying to encourage people, that if you really care about the people, like what you're talking about, you're going to cheer them on to go. Now, if it's a bad move for them, you may counsel them as like, hey, this is not what you think. Yeah. But if it is a growth opportunity, you want that in part because whoever else is on that team and sees that happen and sees you're a cheerleader for them where they go, they're going to have more confidence and trust and work harder. But it is so easy to be too brittle as a leader and unwilling to, the inconvenience that happens to you or the hardship that comes on you. And that is unfortunately just so short-sighted, because you end up sending a lot of the wrong signals to your existing team that's sticking around, and to that person who maybe at some point, it's the thing in state government, it's a relatively closed ecosystem. So a lot of people come back around as they may promote out, but may have an opportunity to come back. You've just sent a terrible signal to them as well. And, I think that's not always thought about or recognized as a leadership thing, is that to me, that was always a hint or a flag that this individual is not a great leader, because they don't know they don't trust themselves to develop the talent, to bring in new talent, to develop the talent, to make the most of these people. And that's unfortunately, I feel like it's one of those that's all too common, just because it's easy to not think about the external of your team and worry about yourself. But it is a chance, I think, for some leaders to shine when they say, yes, go, this is great, let me help you, I'll write you a letter of recommendation, because they're taking the challenge and the burden on themselves of, all right, I'm going to grow somebody new, somebody even better. Earlier in the conversation, John mentioned coaches who do, may or may not be, not to, some of the stories that have come out when Michael Jordan, as a owner and executive of his basketball team, that's been some of the challenges it seems like those teams had, is like he always was competitive with them almost, rather than wanting to cultivate. And whether they're true or not, the that being kind of the story that circulates, it it teaches a good lesson, and it good highlights a truth that is applicable to leadership.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you pretty much said everything I was kind of thinking there. I just felt like it was so good whenever you first said impact, because I started thinking down that path of like, you do need to look at the bigger picture, and your employees may not be your employees forever, and you should want that growth mindset, like you said, Melissa, to see them grow and develop beyond you. And John, we talk about this in our sessions with legacy, and like, what is the legacy that you're going to leave behind as a leader? And hopefully that's a legacy where you've been, elevating people up, and not just having the mindset of like, what can I get out of these people for myself and for my, task myself. So.
And with that, yes, Madeline, I think I always talk about pretend there's a customer on your belt. And if I was a customer and I heard a leader say, well, we're not going to let this person go after this new position, because if he leaves, we're sunk, because he's the only. I'd be, as a customer, I'd go, really? So you got nobody else ready? Yeah. Nobody else can take on this. And even in our small organization, we've had some people leave. Mm-hmm. Now, when people leave our organization, which thankfully has always been for good reasons, it's real evident when someone leaves our organization, because all of us are around the table right now. So if one of us wasn't here a month from now, we go, hey, isn't somebody missing? And the point is, like, I want people to go on for new things. And now, like you said, Caleb, there's going to be a hiccup. And you're going to go, man, we're going to miss some things. We're going to have to do this. And so even we teach this stuff, and we still have been through that a little bit. But when you only focus on short term, then you're thinking, well, we can't let a person go, or maybe we need a person exactly like the person that just left. And I think that's another thing that great leaders won't say that. They're going to go, no, we want a star employee, behavior, performance. They might be different personality, they might have a different technical background, but we'll help them grow. And we joke about this in our team a little bit, because all of our employees have been asked to do some things over the years that probably wasn't on their to-do list right away, like Madeline getting in front of the room at our sessions, which she doesn't do a lot.
Right.
But at first she was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. But I was sensitive to that. We don't have her up there for an hour. But she does an amazing job, and she's. I know you were nervous the first few times. I don't. You may get nervous every time you do it, but people go, man, that is an awesome young lady. She's special. Everybody says, if we get feedback from our team, they're like, man, all of you guys have some kind of common thread, and so I think that's, it wouldn't be good for me if if I said, well, Madeline has this one skill set, and that's where we're going to keep her all the time. But I'm also not going to go extreme, and go, Madeline, would you, speak for 3 hours at a session? So that's hard too, because I think about it like this, and this will be the last thing I say today, but parents, I write this on the board sometimes in our sessions. If you have a baby, you can, let's just safely assume that baby hopefully lives to be 80 years old. That's kind of general life expectancy, roughly. Well, they're a child with you for 18 years. Again, that could be a little longer nowadays, but let's just go with 18. And the remaining time is 62 years. So that's not even close, like the childhood part to the adult part. And so parents, and we've got some people around the table here that have a bunch of kids, but you have to be thinking long term, because the easiest thing to do is let your kid do whatever they want to do. You want to eat that, eat it. You want to run outside, but I don't care. Like, I just want to watch TV, so you go do whatever you want to do. You go, man, parenting is easy. Like, it's so easy. But you don't do that because you go, I've got an adult that's being formed here. And I think that same concept in leadership in the workplace, we forget it. And we go, nope, I'm worried about right now, and that's all we're going to focus on. So I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah. So I think one myth we think of, especially in the United States probably, is the loudest, boldest people. And I kind of said something like that earlier. But there are very unassuming, introverted people that can be awesome leaders. Because the concepts are generally the same. Are there clear expectations? Are we getting awkward early when those expectations aren't being met? And actually, some of the more shy, introverted people may be awesome at those one-on-one conversations. But I think in our culture, we think the quieter you are, the less successful you'll be. And I didn't raise my voice in 25 years of time at Caterpillar, and I mean that. Like I would go to court on that one, and so I wasn't an incredible leader, but I got stuff done, and our teams got stuff done, and I think people knew I cared about them. So I think that's a myth sometimes, that you have to be a certain personality type to make it work. I was also not a manufacturing expert. And you go, wow, that was scary, because Caterpillar had you running a really large place. Yeah, but I think they knew the humbleness. Hopefully, said, I'm not going to pretend to know all that stuff. I've got a team around me that can do it. So if you're not naturally loud or bold or whatever, you might need some people that will speak up in difficult situations. So I hope that's an encouragement to our listeners, because I think we just get pigeonholed as. If you're quiet and unassuming, well, you probably should go into accounting or something. Or you probably should just sit at a desk and do spreadsheets. No, I mean, I think that's, and I assume you've all had leaders that maybe didn't always fit the perfect mold.
Yeah. I've shared this story before, but I molded myself. I'm a golden retriever by nature, secondary lion. But all those years through corporate, I flipped my personality, and I trained myself to become a lion, to be heard at the table,
To fit in with the
to fit in, exactly. And that was probably around like more strategic conversations or corporate oriented projects and things like that. But when it came to leading my people, I went right back to what was natural for me, and that was golden retriever. And I had real relationships with people, and I valued those relationships. I didn't always get it right, but I knew I had to listen more than I talked, for the most part, with my people. So
That's really funny you mentioned that, because the first time I did the personality assessment, I say the first time because I went through the training myself, and then organizations I worked with have done some of the training as we've done the assessment. And weirdly, I've gotten different answers at different times, which I don't think means I have a personality disorder. I think it's more to Melissa's point that depending on the role you occupy, as a leader, certain parts of your personality may have to shine out more, and it may even feel like you're forcing yourself to do it. Because one of the first times, I think it was the first time I did it, I got lion is the response. And I was real proud of myself, and I went home and I told my wife about it, and she's like, "Now, what was this test you were taking?" And I explained it, and she had this awful look on her face, and she's like, "I think they gave you the wrong answers, or the wrong response." I was like, "Well, that was hurtful, but okay." But over time, I've come to realize there's two dynamics there. Part of it is in your sort of personal life, private life versus professional life. But even more than that, I think there were looking back on the role that I was playing. I was chief of staff for a agency that had just under 1,000 people. I was working with 4 different sub agencies within that department, and I was working for a boss who was like, she didn't even need to take the test. Everyone was just like, you're a lion. This is your personality. We're not even going to make you bother with the test. So there were things that I had to do, and there were parts of my personality I had to draw on more in that situation. And I think that's an important thing for leaders to understand, is that at times to succeed and to get where you need to go, that's something you're going to have to do. And that's not abnormally typical. That's just part of what you do. And it leads into another thought that I had when we brought up myths. And one that is important to me is that, sort of the idea that leaders are born that way. They're, leaders, you're born leader. And I think there's something to that. And some of it's rooted in personality, which we've talked about. Some of it's rooted in, other factors and skills that people have. But I believe more people can become great leaders than do or then realize that they can do that. And I'll say from my personal experience, so when I got into state government, I had been, I was a couple years out of law school, had been working in a corporation. I was kind of, had some good experience, but I was not managing a team. I was put in a position where I had 5 or 6 direct reports, and ultimately like 75 or 80 people reporting to me. Like, all of a sudden I had a lot of leadership responsibility, and I'm having to exercise these things that I had not really done. And in response to that, like, I really tried to dig in and learn, to find wise counsel and people around me, and kind of went down a journey that ended up being very conducive to, as I got to know John a little bit and the team. and do some of these trainings. But I think it's important that people don't put themselves in a mindset of, I'm just, always been a shrinking violet. I'm not, and to John's point earlier about being loud and bold, and it's important that people understand there's an opportunity to grow into that, and especially if you're someone who is a high achiever, as happens a lot, high achiever, put in a leadership role. That's not what you're really like to do. What you like to do is go out and land a big deal and hand it off to somebody else to deal with it. There is an opportunity there for those people to pursue and grow and cultivate, but it may require them to press into parts of their personality or to grow in their experience in a way they haven't had to before.
That's great. And let me just thank you all for that. And let me just wrap up with this. I think it doesn't have to be our stuff. I mean that. But we talk about 9 expectations for leaders. They're the same 9 for staff and hourly. But that all comes out of the fact that I was not given something like that when I was moving up. And I thought, no, we had a bunch of requirements for if you were an accountant, like this is how you do that job. And if you run a fork truck, you have to do all these, but for being the leader, there was nothing. And it's such a critical position. So I do think organizations that are thinking about this stuff, what are the expectations for leaders, and are you training them on that? Are you giving them exposure and really continual even coaching and help with that? Are they getting feedback on whether they're good leaders or not? What are the perceptions of their people? But man, we just throw people to the wolves. And unfortunately, we know if you put the wrong person in accounting, if you put the wrong person to run your website, they'll go, oh my gosh, the website's down again. And people freak out about stuff like that, but there is huge risk in picking the wrong person to be a leader. And that can be turnover, it can be revenue, all the numbers. And I just don't, the clients that we see that get it right are really taking that role seriously as opposed to plugging a hole.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. And I feel like you slightly hit on it, John, of being a leader that can ask your people for feedback, especially with that growth mindset. Just knowing that you can be humble enough to be like, hey, is there a way that I can lead you differently? What are my strengths and weaknesses? And you probably, if you're self-aware, some of that, but hearing it from your people is a whole different thing. So that's really, really good. Well, thank y'all so much. And Caleb, thank you so much for being here. It was such a blessing that you came out to the barn today and sat in this nice hot room with us and recorded this episode. I appreciate it.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for joining us today on the John Harrison Podcast. As you know, we believe that a positive work culture creates a ripple effect that extends into families and communities. If you found anything of value in today's episode, please share it with somebody so they can hear it as well. And if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please fill out the form below.